When it comes to men, there is a truth that often goes unnoticed, yet it shapes so much of how they move, how they love, and how they respond in relationships. That truth is this: a man craves respect even more than he craves love. You see, for many women, love is expressed through affection, closeness, communication, and care. For men, love is important too, but the fuel that really drives them, the thing that makes them feel alive and valued, is respect. And here's the twist: many men won't ever say this out loud because it sounds like ego, or it feels uncomfortable to admit that what they really want is to be seen as competent, capable, and worthy in the eyes of the woman they love. But whether they say it or not, it is there and it is powerful. Think about this for a moment. You can love a man deeply. You can even tell him, I love you 100 times a day. But if your words, your tone, or your actions come across as dismissive, critical, or belittling, he will feel unloved. To him, love without respect feels hollow. It doesn't matter how many times you cook for him, how many sweet texts you send, or how many sacrifices you make. If he feels like he is not respected in your eyes, he will retreat, shut down, or even look elsewhere for that validation. That is how strong the need for respect is in the male heart. And here's the tricky part: sometimes women don't even realize when they are hitting this sensitive spot. A sarcastic comment, a comparison to another man, or a tone of voice that makes him feel like he's incapable. These little moments can land harder on him than you think. What seems small to you can echo loudly inside of him. That's because respect is tied to his identity. It's not just about the relationship, it's about who he believes he is as a man. And when that feels threatened, it can cause him to withdraw emotionally or act defensively. Now, this doesn't mean a man is fragile in the sense that you must tiptoe around him, but it does mean that you should understand the way his heart works. Respect is like air to him. It allows him to breathe and stand taller. And when he feels it, he will naturally want to give more of himself, more of his love, more of his effort. When a man feels respected, he feels secure. And when he feels secure, he can love more freely. But when he feels disrespected, even if the love is still there, it feels like a wound that never heals. It's also important to remember that respect doesn't always come in words. It shows up in actions too. Listening when he speaks, acknowledging his efforts, supporting his goals, and believing in his abilities, even in the small things, speak volumes to him. That doesn't mean you can't challenge him or express your needs. True respect isn't about silence or submission. It's about communicating with honor. It's about saying, I see you, I trust you, I believe in you, even when disagreements happen. The hidden weakness here is that a man may never fully tell you this. He may cover it with pride, with strength, or even with silence, but inside, he's watching how you see him, how you speak to him, how you value what he brings. And when he feels respected, his heart opens in ways that even he may not fully understand. It's not about inflating his ego. It's about nourishing the core of who he is. So when you think about hidden male weaknesses, remember this one above all. Respect is not just a preference, it's a deep need. And when it's missing, even the strongest man can feel small. But when it's present, even the most guarded man can rise into his best self. Because love without respect will never be enough. Men often walk through life carrying an image that looks unshakable. They project confidence, strength, and certainty as if nothing can penetrate their armor. But beneath that exterior lies a truth that many women don't always see. His ego is fragile. Even if he acts strong, that doesn't mean he is weak. But it does mean that what you say, how you respond, and the way you treat him has a far deeper impact than you may realize. The ego of a man is not just about arrogance or pride. It is tied to his sense of self, his worth, and his belief in whether or not he is enough. Men are taught from a very young age to perform, to prove themselves, to compete, to achieve, and to never let their guard down. They are taught to act like they have it all together, even when they are breaking inside. So what develops is an exterior of confidence, but on the inside, there are fears, insecurities, and doubts that never truly go away. He may never say it out loud because vulnerability is uncomfortable and sometimes feels dangerous to him. But inside, he is asking questions like, am I good enough? Do I measure up? Can I provide, protect, and succeed in the ways that matter? And when those questions are met with criticism, rejection, or constant comparison, it can feel like his whole foundation is shaking. What many women don't realize is that men often hide behind strength because they fear being exposed. He might laugh off his mistakes, act unbothered when things don't go his way, or even respond defensively when he feels criticized. But that reaction is often covering the fact that his ego, his sense of worth, just took a hit. You see, his ego is not about wanting to dominate or control. It is about wanting to feel capable, respected, and valued. When that doesn't happen, he can feel small, even if his outer shell looks larger than life. Now, here's where it gets important. A fragile ego doesn't mean you should inflate him with empty compliments or hide your truth. What it does mean is that you should be aware of how much power your words and actions carry. Simple things like recognizing his efforts, appreciating what he does, or encouraging him in his goals go a long way. These things might seem small, but to him, they are proof that he is seen, that he matters, that he's not failing in the role he wants to play in your life. On the other hand, constant criticism, harsh tones, or comparisons to other men can chip away at his spirit far more than you think. He may act like he doesn't care, but believe me, it stays with him. The hidden weakness here is that men don't want to admit how fragile their ego really is, because doing so feels like confirming their fears. They would rather appear unshaken rather than say, that hurt me. So instead of telling you, they might pull back, go silent, or distract themselves with work, friends, or hobbies. It's not that they don't feel, it's that they've been trained not to show how deeply they feel. And so the responsibility often falls on the one who loves them to recognize what's behind the mask. Understanding this weakness doesn't mean lowering your standards or giving up your needs. It means communicating with care, expressing your truth in ways that build rather than destroy. It means realizing that the man who looks strong in front of everyone else may be carrying doubt so heavy that only your respect, your encouragement, and your faith in him can lighten the load. Because no matter how bold he seems, no matter how confident he acts, inside there is always a boy who still wonders if he is enough. When a man is faced with conflict, he might appear to handle arguments better than silence, but the truth is silence cuts far deeper than raised voices ever could. Words, even when heated, create a form of connection, They give him something to respond to, a chance to defend himself, explain his side, or even reconcile. But when a woman withdraws emotionally, when she stops engaging, when she no longer speaks her heart or gives him her energy, it shakes him in ways he may never admit. Silence tells him something words often can't, that you are detaching, that he is losing access, and that perhaps he no longer has a place in your world. Men often live with the illusion that arguments are the worst case scenario in a relationship. They imagine that if the two of you are clashing, yelling, or disagreeing, then things are falling apart. But in truth, as long as there's communication, even if messy, there is still fire, there is still care, and there is still some kind of emotional investment. Silence, however, is different. Silence says you are no longer interested in explaining yourself, in being heard, or in building a bridge. Silence communicates indifference, and for a man who thrives on feeling needed and important, indifference is the greatest wound of all. The reason silence hurts so deeply is because it strikes at the heart of his need for validation and significance. He might pretend he doesn't notice when you stop texting, when your tone goes flat, or when your energy withdraws, but on the inside, it unsettles him. He begins to question what he did wrong, whether he has lost your love, and whether someone else now has your attention. He may even grow defensive or cold in response, not because he doesn't care, but because caring without a response makes him feel powerless. And men fear powerlessness more than almost anything else. It's important to understand that silence isn't just about words. It's about emotional availability. A man can feel when your heart is no longer open, when your affection has dimmed, and when your patience has reached its limit. He might try to ignore it, to brush it off, to bury himself in work or distractions, but the quiet speaks louder than any argument could. It whispers to him at night when his mind replays the way things used to be compared to how they are now. It gnaws at him during the day when he notices the absence of your laughter, your questions, or your interest in his life. Some women use silence as a tool, a way of reclaiming power in a relationship where words no longer feel effective. And while silence can create a wake-up call, it can also expose just how deeply dependent a man is on your energy and attention. It forces him to confront the reality of what life feels like without your presence filling the spaces in between. And for a man who sees himself as strong and independent, realizing how much your silence impacts him can be one of his greatest vulnerabilities. But silence isn't always meant to hurt. Sometimes silence is self-protection, a boundary, or a way of saying, I cannot keep pouring into this without receiving anything back. And though a man might not understand it immediately, deep down he knows when silence means the end is near. That is why silence is so powerful. It is not about punishment, but about absence, and absence is what reveals the truth about value. When a man feels your absence, when he experiences your silence, he cannot help but measure the space you once filled. And that is when he realizes how much you meant all along. Because arguments may shake him, but silence pierces him. One of the hidden truths about men is that they are constantly seeking validation of their worth, whether they admit it or not. For many men, their sense of identity is wrapped up in how they are seen, appreciated, and acknowledged by the people closest to them. This isn't always about ego in the shallow sense, but rather about their deep need to feel significant. Men are often taught from a young age that their value comes from what they provide what they achieve, and how they protect the ones they love. And so much of their energy is poured into proving that they are good enough, capable enough, and worthy enough of love and respect. This search for validation doesn't always look obvious. It might show up in the way he works long hours just to feel accomplished, even if it leaves him exhausted. It might show up in his need to be praised for the little things he does, even though he acts like he doesn't need acknowledgement. It might even show up in his frustration when he feels overlooked or taken for granted. Deep inside, a man is often asking one silent question: do you see me? Do you appreciate me? Do you believe I'm enough? When he feels the answer to that question is yes, he stands taller, speaks with more confidence, and carries himself with purpose. But when he feels the answer is no, even if it's unspoken, it cuts at the foundation of his confidence. What makes this such a hidden weakness is that men rarely admit it. They may cover up this need with pride, acting like they don't care what anyone thinks, or they may mask it with arrogance, seeking constant attention to feed the emptiness inside. Yet beneath those layers, the desire is the same: to be validated, to be seen, and to know that their presence matters. Many men would never say it out loud, but they are often measuring themselves against invisible standards, whether it's financial success, physical strength, or their ability to be emotionally steady. And when they feel like they fall short, they secretly crave someone to remind them that they are still valued, still worthy, and still important. For women, understanding this truth can change the entire dynamic of a relationship. Simple words of appreciation, recognition for effort, or even small gestures of gratitude can go a long way in making a man feel secure and fulfilled. It's not about feeding an inflated ego, but about affirming the parts of him that the world often ignores. Because the truth is, men are just as vulnerable to doubt and insecurity as women are. They've just been conditioned to hide it better. When a man does not receive validation, he may seek it elsewhere, sometimes in unhealthy ways. He may bury himself in his career to prove his worth. He may seek admiration from others to feel desired. He may even withdraw emotionally if he feels like he is constantly failing in the eyes of the person who matters most. But when validation is present, when he knows he is enough as he is, he becomes more grounded, more open, and more capable of giving love in return. Validation does not mean constant praise or ignoring his flaws. It means acknowledging his effort, recognizing his intention, and letting him know that he is valued not just for what he does, but for who he is. That kind of affirmation reaches a place within him that no amount of money, status, or external success can fill. It reminds him that he is not invisible, and it strengthens his ability to stand firm in the world. And the deeper truth is this: a man who feels validated does not need to constantly chase approval. He rests in the security of knowing he matters. One of the greatest hidden struggles men carry is their difficulty with emotional expression. From the time many of them are young boys, they are told to toughen up, to stop crying, to be strong. These words may seem harmless on the surface, but they create deep programming within a man's mind. He begins to believe that showing emotions is weakness, that vulnerability is something to be ashamed of, and that strength is measured only by how much he can endure in silence. As a result, by the time he becomes an adult, he is wearing a mask, one that hides fear, sadness, insecurity, and even love at times. Behind that mask, there is a man who craves to be seen for his real feelings, but is terrified of being judged or rejected if he takes it all. This hidden weakness shows up in relationships more often than people realize. A man might withdraw when he is hurt instead of speaking up. He might lash out in anger, not because he's truly angry, but because anger feels safer than admitting he's afraid or in pain. He might even struggle to say, "I love you" freely, not because he doesn't feel it, but because words like that leave him exposed. For him, emotions feel risky. They carry the weight of potential rejection or ridicule. So instead of leaning into them, he often buries them deeper. And yet, those buried emotions don't disappear. They become stress, anxiety, or distance in the relationship. What makes this such a profound weakness is that men often long for emotional connection just as deeply as women do, but they don't always know how to express it. They want to feel safe enough to be vulnerable, but safety isn't something they've been taught to expect. The world tells them to be protectors, providers, and pillars of strength, but rarely does it tell them that strength can also look like openness, softness, and honesty. This creates an inner conflict where he wants to be authentic, but fears that his authenticity will be seen as a flaw. For women, this is where awareness and compassion play a powerful role. Understanding that a man's hesitation to open up is not rejection, but rather conditioning can shift the entire dynamic. Creating space where he feels he won't be shamed for being vulnerable can encourage him to slowly let his guard down. Sometimes it's not about pushing him to talk, but simply being present in a way that tells him it's safe to be human. It's about listening without judgment, respecting his silence when needed, and gently encouraging honesty when he is ready. The truth is, a man's emotional world runs far deeper than most people imagine. He feels joy, love, fear, disappointment, and hope just as much as anyone else. But his weakness lies in not always knowing how to bring those emotions to the surface. When he finally does allow himself to be vulnerable, it's not a sign of weakness at all. It's one of the greatest demonstrations of courage. To open his heart after years of being told to keep it shut is nothing short of powerful. When men begin to embrace emotional expression, their relationships transform. Walls come down, intimacy grows stronger, and love feels more authentic. But until then, the struggle with vulnerability remains a hidden weakness, one that weighs heavily on his heart, even when he pretends it doesn't exist. And recognizing this weakness is not about pity, it's about understanding the humanity within him and realizing that true strength is not about hiding emotions, but about embracing them. In the end, emotional expression is not a weakness at all. It only appears as one because of how society has framed it. The real weakness is denying it, and the real strength lies in learning to share it. One of the deepest hidden weaknesses men often carry is the fear of failure. It is a fear that shapes so many of their decisions, their actions, and even their silence. From the time a boy is small, he is told that his worth is measured by his ability to achieve, to provide, to win, to conquer. He grows up with the belief that he must not only succeed, but that his value is directly tied to that success. And when he falls short, when he makes mistakes, when life doesn't go according to plan, the weight of failure doesn't just feel like a moment, it feels like a reflection of his identity. He begins to ask himself, am I enough? Am I doing enough? Am I becoming the man I'm supposed to be? This silent questioning becomes a shadow that follows him through life. In relationships, this fear of failure often shows up in subtle but powerful ways. A man may hesitate to commit not because he doesn't care, but because he's afraid he won't be able to meet the expectations that come with commitment. He may overwork himself, constantly pushing to earn more, provide more, achieve more, believing that his ability to be loved or respected is tied to his performance. Or he may shut down emotionally, pulling away when he feels like he can't measure up, rather than risking being seen as inadequate. This fear doesn't always look like fear. It can look like control, distance, or even silence. But beneath it all lies the simple truth. He's afraid of not being enough. The irony is that this fear of failure often keeps him from the very things that would bring him peace. Instead of admitting his struggles, he hides them. Instead of asking for help, he convinces himself he must figure it out alone. Instead of leaning into love and connection, he keeps people at a distance because closeness might expose where he feels he falls short. And so he builds walls around himself, thinking those walls will protect him, when in reality, they only isolate him. This weakness, like many others, is not rooted in a lack of strength, but in conditioning. Society has convinced men that to fail is to lose value. But the truth is, failure is not an ending, it is a lesson, a stepping stone, a chance to grow. A man who understands this begins to free himself from the chains of fear. But until then, he lives with a constant pressure on his chest, one that can affect his health, his relationships, and his happiness. For women who love and support men, recognizing this hidden fear is key. It means understanding that his hesitation, his pride, or even his silence may not be rejection, but self-protection. He wants to be seen as strong, as capable, as reliable, but he often forgets that his true strength lies in his humanity, not in perfection. Sometimes what he needs most is reassurance, not that he has to be perfect, but that he is worthy as he is, even in his struggle. That his value is not defined by his wins or losses, but by the man he chooses to be in the face of them. A man's fear of failure will often dictate his choices until he learns to rewrite the story he has been told about success. When he understands that failure is not proof of weakness, but an opportunity to rise again, he begins to step into his true power. And when he does, his relationships deepen, his confidence grows, and his life transforms. Because the truth is this: the greatest failure is not falling, it's refusing to rise again.